Hi, I'm Adam Culp, and you're at Beachcast. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 skills to be a better software developer. So stick around and we'll get right on that. Welcome back. If you want to learn more about programming and more specifically about web development, subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell so you won't miss a thing. Afterwards, go to the website and subscribe to my newsletter so you'll be updated each month with what I'm doing right here at Beachcasts. And please remember to like the video by clicking the thumbs up button. In every software developer's career, they obtain skills that allow them to be a better software developer as they go through their career. So now I'm going to share the top 5 things that I've found that have helped me in my career and helped other people throughout their careers. Now, that's not to say that I'm perfect at every one of these. That is not the case, because God knows I'm not. But these are things that I still strive to get better at every single day. And these are things that allow me to perform the best that I can as a software developer. So let's get started. The number 5 thing, now keep in mind, these are not in any specific order. I've just numbered them 1 through 5, but it doesn't mean that 1 is any more important than number 5. These are just 5 things, and I had to put them in some sort of an order. So number 5 is time tracking. Now, time tracking is really important. It's a very, very difficult skill to master. Often when it comes to time tracking, it's always recommended that you track your time on a monthly, weekly, even a daily basis through goals. So you want to set goals for yourself. You know, what's going to be my goal today? And what are my goals to obtain from one week to the next? What are my goals to obtain from 1 month to the next? What is my 1-year goal? What is my 5-year goal? Now, I realize not everybody knows their 1-year goal or 5-year goal because things change very quickly. But I think that on a daily or a weekly basis, those are things that we can typically set for ourselves with some form of or some level of accuracy. So I recommend doing that because by doing that, it allows you to then be able to have a better idea of how you're doing. For instance, if you find that at the end of the day, you didn't quite get everything done, it does 2 things. First, it enables you to understand better how to manage your time, because if you find that you're falling short, one of a few things might be the cause. Maybe you were distracted too much throughout the day, or maybe you bit off more than you can chew and you need to adjust your time estimates in the future. The other thing that it helps you with is to understand, more about your abilities and how well you can obtain these goals. Now, another thing that I like to group in with time tracking is an hourly tracker. Now, of course, I'm not saying that you should know what you're doing every single hour, but I am a proponent of having some sort of tracking so you can know from day to day, week to week, month to month, what you spent your time on. I find that often if I get into a rut where I'm finding that I'm not really getting much done, if I go back and I look at my time tracker, because I do try to track my time per hour, I use a tool called Hamster. I use Ubuntu as my primary desktop. And using Ubuntu, Hamster is a very easy thing to install. It allows me to track my time pretty nicely. So with that, and there's many tools out there for doing this. Find one that works best for you, that allows you to have the flexibility that you need. For me, Hamster does that. And the thing is you want to track your hours as much as you can. So when you start a new task, kick off your time tracker and say, okay, I'm starting this new task. When you finish that task or you change context to a different task, then you tell your time tracker, okay, I'm starting something new. It's something you pretty much have to force yourself to do. It's not easy. It's not something that comes intuitive. It's something that you can train yourself over time to get used to doing. But believe me, once you do it for a certain time period, you'll find that it is so useful. It really helps you to better manage your time, and you'll find that you're a lot more productive because of it. So time tracking is the number 5 thing that I have on the list here. Now, the next item, number 4, is problem solving. Now, that might seem simple, right? We're developers, we're programmers, so of course we're problem solving. But the reality of it is that we don't stay good at problem solving. We need to continually practice. We need to continually hone our problem solving. The only way to do that is through practice. So practice problem solving as often as you can. Take advantage of puzzles. It doesn't have to be a math puzzle. It could be a math puzzle, but it doesn't have to be a math puzzle, just some sort of puzzle. I honestly find that even doing a jigsaw puzzle on the tabletop can be just as helpful as any other problem solving, because you're still looking at shapes, your brain is still churning and trying to figure out how to fit the pieces together. Also, gaming, as long as you do it in moderation, gaming is a type of problem solving. So don't shy away from gaming. Don't underestimate the power of the problem solving that can come from gaming. Another thing that I like to do is I will look through the weekly newsletters that come out. Subscribe to one of them and look at what is coming down the pipeline, different blog posts and tutorials, maybe other Beachcast episodes, things like that. And try to pick one and do it at least on a weekly basis. Now, I'm not saying go through and read the tutorials. I'm not saying to go through and just read a bunch of blog posts. You can waste tons of time yak shaving by doing a bunch of blog posts. What I'm saying is pick one that is doing something that you really want to give a try. And on a weekly basis, do one step by step. Follow along, do the coding, practice doing whatever it is that they're doing in that tutorial. And that'll keep you fresh. Also, there are other sites out there. There's Brilliant. You can sign up for a daily problem-solving task. Daily is a little bit often. I find that I run behind on that quite often. But you can pick one each week and say, okay, this is going to be my problem. Now, if you want to do one daily, that's amazing. But they can be a bit involving. So I tend not to be able to keep up to one a day. There's also another site out there called Interview Cake that is also very good as they have problems to solve as well. Maybe you want to play a game like chess or something more strategic. But above all, at least pick one tutorial, maybe something that you're not dealing with every day. That's really helpful, because if you're doing something every day, if you're programming using a certain technology and using a certain stack every single day, a tutorial in that stack or in that technology is probably not going to be very helpful for you as far as honing your problem-solving skills, because you're already doing that. The idea behind problem solving, the number 4 problem solving item, is to break out of the box, do something different, make your brain stretch a little bit. Don't let it get into the same rut that you're in all day long with your day job. Now, the number 3 thing that I've put in here is teamwork. Teamwork is a vital skill that if you really want to grow as a software developer, you have to know how or be able to perform teamwork. Now, some of the things that go along with that, some of you might say, yeah, I'm already working on a team. Well, that's not the same as teamwork. Just because you're working on a team doesn't mean you're doing well at teamwork. So what are some of the things with teamwork that really make this a difficult skill, but a very handy skill? Well, the first thing is share openly. Make sure that whenever you're dealing with your teammates, always share openly. Don't hoard information to yourself. Share it amongst your team. Let everybody know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and allow them to participate in it. And they should do the same with you. By doing this sharing, you gain many different things. First off, not only are you making yourself replaceable, which should be everybody's goal at your job, is making yourself replaceable. But you're also allowing them to be replaceable. And now, what do we gain by that? By making ourselves replaceable and by learning how to do teamwork really well, we can now take a vacation and not be bothered. I love being on vacation, out hiking, and I do a lot of hiking, I do a lot of running, I do a lot of active things when I go on vacation. The last thing I want is somebody to call me and need me to help them solve a problem. I'm on vacation. I'm completely getting away from work. I'm relaxing or trying to relax. I don't want somebody calling me. Well, if I have shared with my teammates and if I've shared openly, then somebody else is able to pick up those problems when I'm not there, and they don't have to bother me when I'm on vacation. Also, that same thing now allows me to be more promotable, because if somebody else can pick up where I left off, then I don't have to be there to always do that. I can now be promoted and manage other tasks, other people, other problems, and the people that are still remaining in the previous positions can take care of those things for me. I'm now promotable. I can take on new challenges. I don't have to maintain the previous challenges that I had. Some ways that we can boost teamwork is things like just working with your teammates, ask them questions, do some pair programming, something like that. I've found that hackathons can be very, very helpful in learning how to do teamwork. Now, granted, those aren't the same people you're working with every day, typically, but you can use a hackathon to interact with other people and learn how to work in teams to solve a problem at a hackathon. Also, your local user group is a great resource for learning teamwork. Not only are you talking with people at the user group meetups, but you also may be answering questions if people have questions. So hackathons and user groups are great outlets to learn how to do better teamwork. Another item that I felt was a vital skill for developers is empathy. Now, you might say, empathy, is that really a skill? And the thing is yes, it is a skill. It's not something that we all do naturally. Naturally, we're very terrible at empathy. Most people are horrible at empathy. I used to be bad at empathy, and I still strive on a daily basis to be better at empathy. So what is empathy? Empathy is kind of a way of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So instead of pointing fingers and saying, you're terrible and you did this wrong and you did that wrong, instead, what we do is we put ourselves in their shoes and we say, okay, well, why did you do that? What was driving you to do the thing that you did? So we have to, in order to practice empathy, we have to first, instead of reacting to things, we have to force ourselves to stop and think first. Kind of think of reasons. Why might this person have done what they did? Why might they have said what they said? And then after we've thought that through, then we can react, and we can react in a much more even way, right? We're not letting emotion drive us to react to somebody. We're letting empathy drive to react with somebody in a much better way. Now, sometimes people do deserve to be scolded. Sometimes people do deserve that finger in their face, but oftentimes it's something drove them to do something that you don't agree with. So find out why and practice empathy. You'll find that the people around you appreciate the interactions with you a lot more when you're empathetic and approach them in a different way. And hopefully they also learn how to be empathetic and think about things prior to reacting. All you have to do is take one look at social media today and you see huge numbers of people not using empathy. Social media is a poison these days, but it's not poisonous because these people are bad. They're you, it's me, it's all of us that are on social media. what is making social media so difficult and what makes everybody say, oh, social media is terrible, is the lack of empathy. People just aren't using empathy. Instead, they're pointing fingers and they're saying, you're terrible and this thing that you did is awful and you should be fired and whatever the case might be, right? But if empathy were used, we would realize, wait a minute, that very easily could have been me doing that thing. No, that's not everything, but keep in mind that we're only talking generals here. Another thing that I felt is vital, and the last thing on my list that is an important skill to be a better software developer is communication. Communication is vital. It kind of goes hand in hand with some of the items that we already spoke about up to this point, but communication is important. Now, this does not mean just verbal, right? It could be written. We, as software developers, we spend a lot of time writing comments, putting tickets into the system, or responding to tickets in a ticketing system. Reacting to bug reports, things like that. We spend time even on social media or in Slack, if you're using Slack in your workplace or whatever your communication tool you use to talk with the other developers on your team and at work. It could be very written. So the thing we want to do with communication, of course, is we want to make sure that we do it openly. We try to use empathy, the previous point, to not react and not be too harsh, right? We also have to realize that as we're communicating in text is very cold. And depending on the person that is receiving the text and their state of mind at the time that the text comes over, it can be very different, right? So it's very important that we reread or proofread our text that we're sending to somebody and make sure that it's going to be received as openly as possible. Now, that's not to say that the person's state of mind might not be bad when they receive it. It still might cause some offense. It still might cause somebody to feel uneasy or uncomfortable with what you're saying. But we have to do the best we can. A friend of mine, Cal Evans, shares a story about someone in his family who had told him that when it comes to communication, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them proportionately when you communicate. So you should listen twice and then speak once. So listening, the listening part of communication is very important, and it's probably the most important. Sharing thoughts, sharing ideas is actually much less important than listening to somebody else's thoughts and somebody else's ideas. So just know going in that communication, while it is important, listening is a huge part of communication. When you're speaking with other people, instead of formulating how you're going to respond to somebody while they're in the middle of their point, actually listen to what they're saying. And then once you've heard everything that they're saying, then respond. It's very disheartening to see interactions where one person's speaking to another and they're just firing communications back and forth, but nobody's actually listening to the other person. They're just thinking of their rebuttal prior to the other person even finishing their point, and nobody is actually talking with each other. Instead, they're talking at each other. So strive not to talk at somebody. Try to talk with somebody and have a back and forth rapport communication. Share thoughts, share ideas openly. Realize that through empathy, the number 2 point, realize that they might be looking at something a little differently than you are, or you might be looking at something a little differently than they are. So communication plays a big part in that. So another thing that we want to do is in terms of communication is I see a lot of people, they like to schedule meetings, right? The first thing out of anybody's mouth is when you say, hey, I have something I want to talk with you about, they say, okay, well, let's set a meeting. Well, do that sparingly. Meetings are important. Meetings are great, and we need meetings sometimes in order to really hash out ideas, but try to use them sparingly. And when you do find that you actually do need a meeting, make sure that you plan that meeting. Don't just fire off a calendar invite with no plans, no agenda or anything like that and say, well, we'll figure it out once we get in the room together, or once we get on the phones together, or in the conference calling, whatever, right? Make sure that you have things orderly. Put an agenda in the meeting, and make sure that you've taken the time to figure out what is going to be in that meeting. It'll be infinitely more usable by everybody who's playing a part in that meeting, and it'll ensure that you get a lot more accomplished during the meeting. So those are the 5 things that I think that help every software developer become a better software developer. Now these are skills. These are more soft skills than they are about learning programming languages and things, but they are infinitely a huge part of our job. It's a huge part of our profession to be able to do these 5 things. So please hone your skill on these. Let me know if you have any other points. Leave a comment down below and tell me your thoughts on any other skills that maybe I should have included in this list. Maybe I should think more about that. Also, if you've experienced any of these, any stories, leave those down in the comments as well. Let me know your thoughts. And please remember to subscribe to the channel so you'll know when I release future videos, and also, leave any other feedback or anything. If you have other ideas of videos that I can release, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you for stopping by.